Hey there, kiddos. In this video, we're going to go over lesson 5.1, which is all about ratios and ratio tables. Just as a reminder, the objective is to be able to understand ratios of rational numbers, meaning fractions and decimals, and the use of ratio tables to represent equivalent ratios. Some things to remember is that the ratio is just a comparison of two quantities, and that we can see that, for example, 2 snails to 6 fish, or half a cup of milk for every quarter cup of cream. We're comparing two things. So if we have example number 1, which is writing and interpret ratios, we are told that these are the ingredients to make flubber, and that if we are looking at the ratio of cold water to glue, what would be the ratio? Well, cold water, we're told, is 3/2 cups, whereas glue is 2 cups. So the recipe would be use 3/2 cups of water for every 2 cups of glue. Now, if we want to interpret the value of the ratio in part A, what does that mean? Well, that means for every cup of cold water, what is going to be the amount of glue that we're going to use? Well, if we're looking at cold water to glue, we're looking at 3/2 over 2, or 3/2 divided by 2. Hopefully, when you look at this and you see 3/2 divided by 2, you don't freak out. Hopefully, you're going to remember, we've done this in the past. You've seen this before. You merely are going to need to use the multiplicative inverse of the divisor, or you remember 3 letters, K, C, F. Keep the dividend, that's the 3/2. Change the division symbol to multiplication, and then F, flip the divisor, which in this case is 2, so that you'll have 1/2. And we can rewrite this as 3/2 times 2/2, times 1/2. And when we do, it's going to be equal to 3 over 4. Now, what does that mean? Well, this 3/4 that we were just able to determine, when we're interpreted into this question, it's saying, hey, the amount of cold water in the recipe is 3/4 the amount of glue. So whatever amount of glue that we have, water is going to be 3/4 of that. All right. So with that in mind, let's take a look at example number 2. If we're looking at this real world problem where we're going to mix half a cup of yellow paint with 3/4 cups of blue paint to make green paint, and we want 15 cups of green paint, how much yellow paint do we need to use? Well, we just figured out, if we're looking at the question, that we need to use half a cup of yellow paint for every 3/4 cups of blue paint. So that means half a cup of yellow paint plus the 3/4 cups of blue paint is going to give us the green paint. Hopefully you remember, to add fractions, what do you need to have in common? Well, you need to have a common denominator. So 1/2, if we're going to add that to 3/4, what's the common denominator going to be? Common denominator is going to be 4. So 1/2 is equal to 2/4. 2/4 plus 3/4 equals 5/4. So that means for every half cup of yellow paint, we're going to have a total of 5/4 cups of green paint. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. So how do we figure out the amount of yellow paint versus blue paint? Well, we're told in the question, 1/2 times 4/5, meaning the reciprocal, KCF, change, flip. 1/2 times 4/5 is going to give us 4/10, and we want to simplify that by dividing by 2, which gives us 2/5. Now, if we want a total of 15 cups of green paint, we multiply that 2/5 times 15, and that's where we end up with 6. So 6 is telling us, hey, if we want 15 cups of green paint, we need to have 6 cups of yellow paint. Now, if I were to ask you, how many cups of blue paint would there be if we know that there are 6 cups of yellow to give us 15 cups of green? Well, 15 minus 6 would give us 9. So we would need 9 cups of blue paint in order to make the 15 cups of green paint. All right. With that in mind, we're now going to get into our classwork. So go ahead and take out your pencils and we can get to it.